forgiveness, it's not a task, it's a returning. It is the tender moment and movement of the soul reclaiming what it once turned away. Not to fix it, but to love it into wholeness. Forgiveness is not about forgetting. It's about remembering differently, seeing again through the eyes of love what was once seen through the eyes of pain. This is the sacred release, not of what happened, but of what kept love from flowing. So I would just like to pause here and just share a little bit. You've heard this many times, but I would like to revisit it because it was so powerful, and it really was when energy moved in me. And for the longest time, because of what I witnessed in my daughter, I became very angry and bitter with my ex, and I blamed him. It's hard for a mother to witness their daughter, a father to witness their child, or whoever. Even for my mom, it was so horribly hard to watch what was happening to her. That's when I witnessed her going into the path of drugs and alcohol. And so vulnerable. All it takes is the wrong group of people, or one friend that brings them into that world. And so for me, I watched her enter into this path, and there was nothing I could do. And yet I tried. I tried to have her peach at it, where they send them to a treatment, but it was only a few days, and it was never enough. And I tried to go to Child and Family Services and say, look, my daughter's not attending school. What do I do? Because I didn't want her to get lost in that world. I didn't understand she was the soul. I didn't know that. And so I just thought this in the best way that a mother would, trying to protect her child. But I see now that all that did was prevented me from living. It really did. It stopped the flow. And I didn't know that because I'd never experienced the flow. I didn't even know there was the possibility that once we heal our trauma, our wounds, that all of a sudden we have this flow of life force energy enter into us. And so when I finally did see that her father wasn't going to change, so I had to make a different choice. I had to choose to accept and to allow what was happening and to send loving energy instead of the worried mother trying to fix energy. And as my heart began to soften, I would bring Mark into my meditation. I could never have done that from my mind. But what happens is when we enter into the heart is connected to the divine, it's connected to the soul. It softens. It doesn't want to hold on to the anger, onto the past, onto the guilt, onto the shame, onto anything. It doesn't. It only wants us to be present with it in the moment, to allow love to flow. And so that's what I witnessed, was that this big wave of energy. I found something inside of me that led me into the healing. And so I would have had to say yes to keep entering into that space. But once I said yes, there's something that happens. And there is a letting go, and there is a movement of grace, of energy, of a softening that comes in. And so what I know about the soul is that each one of you here has something, because it's our journey. And how do we ever get to remembering and to softening and to allowing without the pain that causes the distortion and the blockage? And then we feel this contraction and desire so much to not want that anymore in our lives. And that's where we move from the personal self into the soul. So forgiveness isn't something we do. It's not like you wake up one day and you decide, oh, I'm going to forgive. Because I can guarantee, even if you make that decision, what will happen is a part will come on and it will start to fight you. So you'll have two different parts. So you'll have a part that wants to forgive, and the other part is like, what do you mean? Why would you ever forgive that? Or whatever the story is. So we have to understand that in order to truly find forgiveness, this is not something you, the personal self, can do. It's something that you move into. These sacred moments where you just stop and you breathe and you come back into the center. It's almost like that you come back home just by pausing, just by breathing. And you begin to realize that there's something within you that says, come. And we don't need to know it. We don't need to understand it fully. It's only to soften and to surrender into it. But anybody that ever has a child knows that you would do anything to protect them. And to see that happen, naturally, the human part of me is like, how could you do that? And I really was very angry because I saw what happened to her, especially when he just turned his back and stopped talking to her. And for me, the personal self, I could stay bitter for the rest of my life. Many people would. The ego will see through the stories, through the wounds that we carry. But the soul will always see it through the lens of, I am growing, I am evolving, I am remembering, and I am going home. And so it accepts it. It doesn't resist. And the problem with forgiveness is most of us cling to whatever that is because it's like, how can I possibly forgive this? So I get it. Even now to this day, she's not part of her life and he's not part of my son's life. He's not part of either of their lives. So I don't tell the story because it's about my story. I tell it because I think within my story, you can all relate to your own in some way. So each one of us has soul wounds, and they're designed by us so that we can begin to remember, because they take us the furthest away from our true selves. When I was going through that, I was fixated on something that I couldn't change anyway, rather than just accepting it. And so years went by. I think it was at least 5 years straight. It was almost like every year it kept getting worse, not better. Because I was not changing. I was so stuck in it. So it's sad for us to not understand and remember how beautiful we are and how deserving we are of love. The only way we ever get to it is not by somebody else, it's by ourselves making that choice. And it takes one moment and one decision to keep showing up over and over and over again, until finally the energy begins to match. When I first brought Mark into meditation, I got to such a beautiful place, and for whatever reason, that there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. That is something that was a key for me. It may not be for you, but it was for me. And so somehow I could hear it in my mind. I began to use it as a mantra. It was like prayer. And so when I would enter into that space, and of course, my heart was wide open. I was surrounded by the love of the Divine Mother who was right there with me, but I didn't know. And Of course I could bring him in then, because I was in unconditional love. I was seeing the wounding in him and wanting him to receive the healing that he too deserved. So that's beautiful when we begin to see that we're that powerful that we can actually bring somebody else in that's caused us so much contraction and send them the healing energy. And that's what I did. So somewhere in you, you may be storing something that feels like pain, betrayal, fear, or abandonment. Energetically, this can show up as a contraction in your chest or in your breath. A lot of us have a hard time taking a deep breath, and then we begin to notice that we're on this repetitive thought loop, and we begin to witness ourselves being more emotionally reactive to things. We maybe notice ourselves pulling away. We don't really trust. And then there's even an unconscious part of us that is in resistance to receiving the healing. This is totally unconscious. This is what happened. And so understanding the tension, though, is not meant to be punishment. The tension is for you to become aware. There's something that's not right here. There's something that's feeling off for me. What is that? Your inner GPS that's talking to you all the time. And it is the message from your soul. And your soul is waiting for you to begin to become aware of it, to breathe into it, to allow the breath to start to heal, and know that there is an aspect of the Divine Mother, so grace will enter in with you. Now, this is huge. Everything on the outside is a mirror for us. It's hard to grasp that because it's hard to understand how does that apply to me, but it does. So think about this, okay? We all have this perception of how things should be. And that's the personal self. We have been programmed by our families, by our culture, by our friends, by society, by social media. And so we have this expectation when we enter into dialogue with somebody, it should go a certain way. Most of the time, it doesn't. And so then we're triggered. And so what will happen is I'm just going to read this and we'll pause, okay? And then that way I stay true to what was shared with me. So when another shares a truth that doesn't resonate with us, or when they reflect something about us that feels off, it's easy to believe that something is wrong. We either doubt ourselves or we react to correct them. But in the fifth dimensional mirror field, what's being offered is not fact, it's frequency. It's about the misalignment of coherence. So we begin to relearn to understand that this isn't about the words that are being spoken. It's about the mismatch in energy. It's about a mismatch in the frequency. So we feel that contraction. But often that contraction moves into dialogue in our mind. So rather than going into the mind, if we paused in the body and we started to experience, what is the body telling me? What happens when I enter into conversation with this person versus when I'm entering into conversation and almost feels like communion with someone else? It's almost like one is the language of the soul, and it feels peaceful, and it feels harmonious, and it feels ever expanding, and another is where you're entering into dialogue and you can feel yourself contracting and contracting and contracting, and you're dissolving. And in that, we often will rant and we give it a name. But here, what's being asked is for you to begin to understand that distortion. Now I'm going to look at the notes again. Distortion is not opposition, it's an invitation to deeper self-attunement. And right now we're all going to be experiencing this because there's more light coming in for each one of us that brings up all the stuff that hasn't fully been healed. And so we will have the mirror through others. And so if we begin to look at it rather than the story, rather than the thoughts, give yourself the space to go into your body and to begin to recognize, what am I feeling? What am I sensing? Sometimes even the contraction will come when some truth comes up, because truth can cause contraction too. Because we witness something that we've been in denial of, or pushing away. Maybe not even denial, but it's easier. See, remember the way the ego is designed. The ego is designed to keep us safe. So the ego never likes anything that's different. It doesn't want you to evolve spiritually. That's why it's so hard for us when we're on this path at first, when we are moving, when all of a sudden we fully commit to embarking on the path of your own soul discovery. You come against resistance and you feel like you'll take steps forward, and then all of a sudden you're brought right back. Actually, that's good, because the contraction actually allows you to move even further ahead once you move through the contraction and you don't fight it. We witness and we give the contraction the love and the attention it deserves, rather than resisting. And that's what happens for most of us, is it doesn't feel good, and so I don't want to look at it because it's too painful to feel it. It's too painful to witness it, so we deny it. And yet, in denial, it will continue to repeat over and over and over again. Witness what happens when you have the TV on. Witness what happens when you're reading on Facebook or Instagram and you all of a sudden, where did I go? All of a sudden, I'm sucked right back into this. And so begin to witness your body, what the body is telling you. Now, here is what might be happening. When we understand distortion is not opposition, it's an invitation to deeper self-attunement, and you're noticing that whenever you're in the company of somebody, you feel there's a misalignment, you're noticing it, know that you might be outgrowing a version of your truth. And truth evolves as we evolve. So understand that the person's reflections no longer fit with who you are becoming. They don't hold the same space. It's a hard one to move through too, because it's people that we know and we love. And as you evolve and as you grow, you begin to notice that you're feeling the contraction rather than the expansion, and know that in order to continue to expand, we can't keep limiting ourselves and bringing back what no longer fit. And remember that we're moving into a different field. We're moving into a new awareness. Many of us will be moving into fourth and fifth dimensional consciousness. We can't bring all of our old patterns in there with us. And so we are moving from thought-focused to aligning to the body and allowing the body to be the inner GPS that talks to us. Another thing is the person that's speaking, they may be saying what they think I want them to say. But my body is saying, there's something off here. And then she says, to navigate this with grace, pause. Let your nervous system settle and ask not, are they right? But what in me is being touched by this? What am I feeling? See, here's another thing we do, is we make excuses for people over and over again, or for ourselves, rather than checking into my body and saying, what is this touching inside of me? And begin to listen to the body, not from the mind, just to soften and to witness what's arising. Even if you don't know, what you're doing is you're training yourself to start to begin to witness your body. So you notice, I can tell my breath is constricted, but when I take a deep breath, I can feel the flow of energy moving into my body, and that feels good. Or, oh, I feel this spot is very tight, but yet when my awareness travels here, it feels like it's okay. It's not the area that's being affected. And so you begin to use your body as your barometer. It talks to you. And the truth is once we learn how to listen to our body, we will never, ever again wonder if this is good for me or not good for me. Body will tell us. And then when you feel the place in your body where you're noticing the contraction, the dissonance, start to breathe into it. Just until you feel more clear. It's not certainty, it's not answers. You have breathed into that space, and now you feel a release. So remembering that when we are triggered, what we're recognizing is that something is misaligned. It's a mismatch. It diminishes our life force energy. We feel drained. It delays the integration of the lesson, the soul lesson. So it has to keep coming around and around and around, or we never leave it. And understanding, though, too, I want to be cautious with when I say it comes around again, because it always will. When we're in the spiral, when we're on the feminine pathway to the Kundalini rising, you will revisit. But every time you revisit something, when you move through it once and you've seen that you can move through it, you will take that wisdom in with you, with the knowledge of what you did to help get you through it. And this is where the power of our choice comes in, because we get to decide, am I going to let this same thing that's coming up again, and it's like, oh, I don't have the energy to move through that again, or I know how to move through this. So rather than holding on, we begin to let it go and to surrender it. And know that we've experienced it before, we've moved through it before, I can move through it again too. So I just want to be careful with how I phrase that, because you might move through it again and again and again. But each time you take in more of your awareness, you have more energy, you have more courage, you have more strength, you felt connected, you have all those tools. And so it's all of a sudden you realize, I can do this. Our heart has the capacity to create this huge field, and that's what happens when we move into communing with the divine indwelling. Our heart field is so magnetized, it's so huge, and we move through something that our mind could not take us through. So understanding that when we're holding on, we're minimizing not only our life force, we're not moving through the soul lesson, And our heart energy cannot be amplified in the way that allows us to really experience ourselves as a soul. So that restriction feels like separation rather than connection. And it's never meant to be that way. And yet we don't understand that is the path that we, the soul, chose. And so it's understanding I chose this for a reason. I chose this to awaken. I chose this to remember. I chose this so that I could have that connection again to the divine. And if you chose it, that means that you have it in you to move through it. Otherwise, that wouldn't have even been given to you. So we begin to look at forgiveness, then it's never about the other person. And this is where the personal self gets caught on it, because it thinks, why would I forgive them? They don't deserve to be forgiven. But forgiveness is actually about liberating your own energy, liberating yourself, freeing yourself. It liberates you from stagnation, from not moving, staying in the same pattern, staying stuck. So when they talk about timelines and all of a sudden you feel like you've moved into a different timeline, you literally can feel that because you know that there's something that you alone liberated yourself from. Not you alone, but you and the divine, but nobody out in the outside did that for you. You did that. Even like when you come here on Sunday and I share with you, I'm sharing so that you can continue to take it deeper. Not to leave it here on Sunday and to walk away and to never pick it up again. It's like pick up what resonates and continue to move through what moved you, what called to you, and leave the rest. But if there's one thing, one word, one line, one sentence, one practice, and we get busy, and then that's the distraction, that's the distortion, that's where we separate and we forget it. It becomes very beautiful when you say yes to yourself. You don't know where it will lead you, but you just know, I'm saying yes. And I'm open to the magic and to the miracle and to the mystery. It's you.